Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. This is a B1 level uh, video on the subject of academic language, and today we're going to be talking about study skills. So think about your free time and answer these questions. So what do you usually do in your free time out of school or work if you're not in school? How much time do you spend with your friends, and how much time do you spend studying? So Quinn has exams soon and he's not feeling confident. So let's read what Quinn says and then you can answer the questions. I have exams coming in a few weeks and I'm really nervous. I want to get good grades, but I never know how to prepare. I have so many different subjects and I don't know where to start. I always spend so much time looking at my books, but it doesn't seem to help. So, how do you usually prepare for your exams? Do you ever have the same issues as Quinn? And what advice would you give him? So, Zana is a college student who has a lot of experience with preparing for tests. So, read her advice and then discuss these questions. The most important thing to do if you have tests to prepare for is to schedule your time. Before you start, consider how much time you can study each day. For example, perhaps you have 2 hours each day from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you always study at the same time, it is easier to form a habit, and studying then becomes easier. Think also about which subjects you need to focus on more. If science is difficult for you, spend more time on that. If math is easy for you, don't spend so much time on that. So, do you think Zana's advice is good? Why or why not? And what does she mean by form a habit? All right, giving suggestions. So Zana used imperatives to give suggestions. Imperatives simply use the dictionary form of the verb and no subject is necessary. So here are the examples. Before you start, consider how much time you can study each day. Think about which subjects you need to focus on more. If science is difficult for you, spend more time on that. And then a negative imperative can be formed by simply adding don't. If math is easy for you, don't spend so much time on it. So imperatives can sometimes sound forceful. However, in casual conversation, they are usually used to give suggestions. All right, so give some um, suggestions to the people using imperatives. You can try that on your own and then restart when you're ready to see some possible answers. So I don't know how to do my science homework. An imperative might be think about asking someone for help. I feel really sick today. Stay home and get some rest. I always have arguments with my sister. Try to see things from her point of view. And I can't find my social studies textbook. Look under your bed. And these are just some possible answers. You might have other suggestions that you could make to these students. But again, just make sure that you're using an imperative. All right, we're going to read some more suggestions from Zana and then discuss the questions. You should learn to take good notes too. If you can't understand your notes later when you look back at them, then they are useless. You could try using numbers or codes or even pictures in your notes. Just make sure you use a system that you know well. So do you think Zana's advice is good? Why or why not? Does she use any imperatives? And what other expressions does she use to make suggestions? So, imperatives, here she says, just make sure you use a system that you know well. Other suggestions, these aren't necessarily imperatives. You should learn to take good notes, and you could try using codes or numbers. Okay, so how do you take notes? Do you use any of the ideas below? So, bullet points, acronyms, which are letters that stand for each word, pictures, mind maps. All right, and these are some ideas from a teacher. Mr. Rozola is a high school teacher. Read his thoughts on preparing for tests. In my experience, the students who do the best are not the students who study the most. The students who get the highest grades are those who use their time the most wisely. It is better to study well for 1 hour than to study poorly for 3. So, do you agree with Mr. Zola? And what do you think he means by studying well? And what does he mean by studying poorly? All right, and now we're going to read Mr. Rozzola's explanation and answer the questions. To study well, you need to make sure that the time you spend studying is as effective as possible. This means avoiding distractions. Put your phone in another room so you can't see it. Close all internet tabs that are not related to your studies. Next, don't multitask. Just focus on one thing at a time until you finish. Then move on to the next task. Nobody can do lots of tasks at the same time well. Finally, take breaks often. Some people think studying well means never having a rest, but this is totally wrong. We all need time to relax. Try taking a 5-minute break every 30 minutes you study. So, in your own words, see if you can explain what Mr. Ozola means by studying well. Then also think of some examples of distractions. Distractions are things that just take your mind off what you're doing. And so some of the things he mentioned are things like your phone, talking to people, maybe uh, feeling hungry, getting up to get a snack. All of those things are distractions. What is multitasking? Multitasking is trying to do more than one thing at once. And what language does Mr. Rozzoli use to make suggestions? So he says you need to make sure, and then he uses some imperatives. Put your phone in another room, close all internet tabs, don't multitask, just focus on one thing at a time, move on to the next task, take breaks often. Try taking a 5-minute break for every 30 minutes you study. So Miguel is a student in your class who always gets good grades, and you ask him for some suggestions. He says, I always try to make studying more interesting. One way is to make a game of it. For example, sometimes I make flashcards from my notes and then see how many things I can remember without making a mistake. Or sometimes I use apps on my phone. There are so many free apps you can download to make studying more fun. Of course, perhaps the easiest way to make studying more enjoyable is to do it with friends. You can also get their help if there's something you don't understand. So, have you ever used flashcards to prepare for a test? What apps do you think are best for studying? And do you find studying with friends to be better than studying alone? Why or why not? And finally, you can ask your family for advice. So they say make sure you get enough sleep. You need to get at least 8 hours of sleep each night, and turn off all your devices an hour before you go to bed. If you don't sleep well, you won't be able to study properly. You need to eat well too. Eating junk food and snacks while you're studying isn't good for you. You should eat fruits and vegetables to make sure you have the energy you need to study. So, do you agree with this advice? And explain your answer. So, you've heard a number of different suggestions for how to study better before a test from different people. So, in your opinion, what is the best way to study? So, think about all the ideas mentioned and complete the table below. So, when should you study, where, how, and with whom? All right, so we've covered several vocabulary items in this lesson. So, you're going to complete the sentences with words from the boxes. Pause the video, try that on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, number one. It's not a good idea to multitask. Instead, you should try to focus on one thing at a time. You should avoid all distractions when you study. Turn off your phone and go somewhere quiet. If you always study at the same time and in the same place, it will become a habit. Then it will be easier to remember to study. Try writing key points from your notes on flashcards. You can then check them to see how much you remember. You don't need to write out full sentences in your notes. Some people use acronyms to save space. Now think again about Quinn from the start of the lesson and what advice can you give him, and give some specific examples. And here are some expressions you can use. You could try, you should plus a verb, one way is to, or you can. So look at what he said and see if you can give him some good advice. So then reflect on what's been covered in this lesson and answer the questions, and maybe think of some suggestions on how to study better. So again, which subjects do you usually find easy? Which subjects do you usually find difficult? And how do you study to prepare for tests? And that brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have any questions, please leave those for me in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.